So Corey, tell us what happened to Willie. Tell us what happened to your brother.
Yes, so February 9th of 2019, my brother had fallen asleep behind the wheel of his car in a Taco Bell drive-thru in Vallejo, California. Now, there were Taco Bell employees, there were food delivery drivers that were parked behind my brother, at least 3 or 4 people that all came to the side of the window, looking in, trying to see what was going on with him. People had been honking their horns and whatnot. Um, the call was made to 911 for a wellness check. What ended up happening was Vallejo police showed up, and if you have an opportunity to watch the video, and I want to give a shout out to Eton right now, just before I continue, because he is someone that, yeah, I knew who he was as a fan of sports and basketball. I remember him playing at Syracuse and playing in the pros, but I met Eton through a mutual friend in this advocacy fight. And when I spoke to him and when he spoke to me, he wasn't someone that was providing a platform because he wanted to grab a headline. This was a person that I knew from the things he was telling me that had taken time to see what had actually happened to my brother, the available video, and to listen to him speak on it. It let me know that this is the type of platform that I want to speak on. This is someone that has given me an opportunity to share my brother's story for the right reasons. And so getting back to Willie's story, the police were called. And if you watch the video, it gets to a point in the video where they allegedly say there's a gun in his lap. Now, I want to say this up front. I personally, my family, our attorneys, we have seen all 37 body cam videos. Now, no one can show me a gun in any one of those videos. From the time my brother is seen sleeping in the car to the time he is after he has taken 38 bullets. There were 55 rounds shot from 6 officers in 3.5 seconds. 38 hit my brother. 13 of them were fatal. He was then yanked out of the car so hard that his shoes remained in the car. Now, he was yanked onto the ground. You still cannot see a gun in any of these videos. You don't see a gun until much later when it's almost daylight. And this is after you can see and hear officers in video huddling up, calling what I would consider to be the next football play, how we're going to basically manipulate the crime scene and what our story is going to be. And there's so much to cover with my brother's death because of the history of policing in Vallejo. I know from when Eton first began to give my brother some notice, a lot of things have happened in the history in the city of Vallejo regarding policing. Things have been broken by networks, media networks, as far as badge bending. I don't know if any of you are familiar with badge bending. It's a tradition that has been taking place. We know now that the night my brother was murdered, the 6 officers the following morning were prepared to do a tradition of where they bend one of the 6 tips of their badge after they get a kill on a citizen. And this has been taking place for many decades in the city of Vallejo. Open Vallejo is an excellent research and information legitimate network that puts out a lot of credible information about what's been going on. So we do know that I can't speak on some of these specifics simply because we are in litigation with our civil trial. And there are some things, Vallejo is fighting us every tooth and nail for every piece of paper and report that we ask for. And just to give you guys kind of an understanding, we do know for a fact that the following morning after Willie was executed, they were in the parking lot, the 6 officers, that is, of the Vallejo Police Department after they had given their statements. and they were discussing when they were going to bend their badges. They were drinking beer at the time. The judge in our civil trial, to let you all know that I'm not puffing smoke, we have 7 things that we have filed against the Vallejo Police Department with our civil trial. One of them was conspiracy to commit murder. About 8 months ago, the federal judge in our case, went along with something that is unheard of, where he actually allowed the conspiracy charge to stick. And that is unheard of when it comes to prosecuting. Well, they're not being prosecuted, but in a civil trial, when it comes to police officers. The same judge has now come back. It's been about 3 months. And he has now said that after having to do much research, even though conspiracy, he believes, acknowledges took place because of something Eton posted talking about a couple of days ago with qualified immunity, we are being forced to drop the conspiracy charge. So I want to let people know that we have a federal judge that has acknowledged conspiracy for murder with these officers. So when I say my brother was executed, he was executed. These officers talked about what they were going to do. It's on videotape. They literally said, we're not going to give him a chance. If he moves, you know what to do. As far as the gun goes, I want to just continue to say it has to be referred to as an alleged gun because we haven't seen one. And they can't show us any video of where there is one. They can show us a gun in a bag after the fact, once it's daylight, the next morning, but they at no point can show us a gun in my brother's possession. They can't show us a gun in the car. They can't show us a gun that fell to the ground when they yanked him out the car. They can't show us any video where they physically retrieved a gun from the car. And I know I'm kind of being a little long lasted. If you just bear with me, these are some of the false narratives that police departments put out as soon as these murders take place. Because what would the average person think if they knew the truth, that my brother did not have a gun? They would be like, well, the police murdered him then. Well, why would they do that? These things are not conspiracy theories. We've been called lunatic friends, conspiracy theory. This is what we were called at the beginning when Willie was first murdered. A year later, when the badge bending allegations came out, and they realize, oh my God, this stuff has really been happening. And we have district attorneys and we have people in high places, county supervisors. My family has sat with senators, congressmen. They've all cried about what happened. They've all acknowledged that my brother was murdered. But yet they are in bed and they do business with the Vallejo Police Union, which is the most powerful entity in the city. And these police officers have a license to kill, and they've been doing it 19 kills in the city of Vallejo in the last decade.
We're talking that's Corey McCoy. He's talking about his brother, Willie McCoy, who was gunned down, 38 bullets, 55 shots into a car. Man was asleep. They also published his arrest record, his criminal conviction, because that's how you have to do that.
I have to correct you on that. My brother was not convicted. He was exonerated.
Okay, that's even, but it's on the record,
well,
like,
but
put that out there. And I'm not indicting him. I'm saying that.
No, and I know you're not, but I need to say that this is part of the victim blaming narrative that is used that has nothing to do with what happened to Willie. Anybody that wants to do the research, yes, my brother was charged. You can go look and see what in the city of San Francisco. About 2.5, 3 years prior to his death, he hired an attorney like anyone who gets their due process would do, and he was exonerated from what he was charged with. So when they show a mugshot of Willie being arrested in San Francisco, people need to know that pained look on his face. He had just been beaten by 2 or 3 San Francisco police officers before they took that mugshot. And they're going to do everything in their power, whether it's show some of his art. My brother was a rapper. You can find videos that he's made. I don't care what he's doing while he's expressing his art. I'm not going to allow you to victim blame him because he's showing a certain circumstance that he and many of his friends had to come up in.
866-801-8255. We're talking with Corey McCoy, the brother of Willie McCoy. Etan Thomas is here. He's the author of Police Brutality and White Supremacy. In this book, you feature interviews with everyone from Steph Curry to Chuck D, Yamich Alcindor, who is an amazing journalist, Jamel Hill, and others. What is it that you want us to walk away from, Etan, when we read this book?
Well, there's a lot, and just dealing with everything that Corey just said, there's a constant theme that always happens. I talked to Stephen Jackson, and if everybody remembers how close he was with George Floyd, and the same thing happened in that case before the video came out. If it wasn't for Miss Darnella Frazier, we would have never known anything. We would have never even heard of George Floyd because they had already written the report. They had already filed it. They didn't mention anything about the cop kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes and then killed. They just, it was already all done, and they posed it as him being the aggressor. So a lot of times what I'm seeing as I'm talking and looking at these different cases is that the same thing always happens when the police vilify the victim who they killed. They vilify the victim, put out a false narrative, and they're not held accountable for it.
I'm quite certain.
Go ahead.
I'm quite certain, as Willie was, that George Floyd, if you look at the police report, the 6 police officers that murdered Willie are listed as the victims. Willie is listed as the suspect. It's all organized and plotted out, a planned narrative of this is how we deal with police murder 101. As Etan was saying, the police reports are being written by the coworkers and friends of these officers.
Right. And that's one of the things that we examine in the book is now we identify the issue. Now, what are solutions that we can get to try to fix this issue? I talked to retired policemen, Officer Joe Ested, who was the vice president of the police union. I talked to Sonia Pruitt, who is a captain right here in Montgomery County. And they're all offering different solutions that a lot of police departments are not against. I want to say this also because since I've started doing this work, working with We Matter, I've worked with a lot of different either panels or organizations or functions or something like that. And these policemen will tell you that yes, they do have to wear too many hats. Yes, they are responsible for things that they haven't been trained to be responsible for. Yes, it doesn't make, but then once you talk about funding, they don't want to lose the funding for that, whatever it is that they're being paid to do. So that's where it becomes an issue. And then you have the issues of the politicization of being anti. So even right now, even my book and doing a book on this title, the first response from a lot of people from, I don't want to say just the right, but, a lot of people from the right is that, oh, so you're anti-police. And it's like, well, no, it has nothing to do with being anti-police. Everybody should be anti-police brutality. Is anybody pro-police brutality? You know what I mean? But that's the narrative that they try to flip it towards. But just taking each, so what I did was I took each chapter is a different topic, and I go through each of them. Start off with Rodney King. I'll talk about my personal, that was like, I was gonna go back to middle school, and I'm talking about, I spoke to Rodney King's daughter, spoke to Craig Hodges. Everybody's giving their perspectives of when they were there. Then I moved to the next topic. I spoke, then went to the Central Park Five and spoke to Raymond Santana from the Central Park Five and got his, firsthand account of everything that happened. Spoke to another officer there, a New York retired New York officer who was kind of giving the talk to young people about what not to do when you're accosted by the police. Like never talk to the police without your parents, ever, no matter what. Like never talk to them without your parents. As we saw in, When They See Us, the way the police manipulated them. So we're identifying, we're using the voices of different people that people recognize and solution oriented. So that's the whole purpose of the book.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate, thank you, Etan, thank you, Corey, both. Corey, you a couple of times used the word narrative when speaking to kind of the story that's told about your brother, the story that's put out there. And as we talk about the use of platform, Etan, the way you are valuably using your own platform, documenting people speaking in their own voice on different sides with different views, I wouldn't say on different sides, with different views of this picture of police brutality in America. And I appreciate that because of this reality of what you connect to and the way you frame and name both brutality and white supremacy as American traditions, right? That these are part stories are become embedded in our culture, narratives become embedded in our culture, and then they begin to manifest in traditions, in rituals, and in practices. And we begin to protect those rather than thinking clearly about actually what we're there to do. And so I wanted to ask a question, because this last thing you noted, I experienced. So I co-chaired something called the Ferguson Commission after the police killing of Michael Brown. And on that commission were police officers. And the head of the state police union was on that commission with me. And one of the things that he and I agreed on was this idea that you just talked about, that police are being asked to do more than they signed up for. And none of them signed up, you know, including nobody went through the police academy to stop people for walking down the street. Nobody went to the police academy to write tickets, right? No matter where they came from. He believed police were being used in a way that was inconsistent with their original inspirations. But he was also caught up in inhibiting better legislation, better ordinances, because he headed the police union. And so I wanted you, if you would, say a little word about the difference between police who agreed with certain solutions, police departments who may have wanted certain solutions, and police unions who are also a part of this discussion. And see, are there things that you found in those distinctions that are keeping us from getting at better solutions to police brutality?
Well, one of the issues with police unions is that they're dedicated to defending the police, right or wrong. They're not defending the police when they're right. They're defending them regardless. And that's a major issue. There's no checks and balances. So if you're going to defend somebody, you know, whether they're right or wrong, you're not on the side of truth or justice. You're just defending them no matter what. That's the way police unions are set up. I mean, we have case after case where, though, and I got to say that New York police union might be one of the worst, to be honest with you. And I'm, you know, I was just doing an interview with the Amsterdam News, and they were asking me if I was hopeful for Eric Adams. And I was like, hopeful for what? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean am I hopeful? You know, it's hard. It's hard. I'm looking at how he's moving and who he's, you know, kind of pandering to. And I know the strength of police unions. And I saw how the police unions treated Bloomberg. I mean, I saw how the police unions treated. I mean, they want their way or the highway, and there's no even in between. Who was the where they turned their back on? That was de Blasio.
De Blasio. Mm-hmm.
Right. They all turned. I was like, wow, look at the amount of defiance. And they're always talking about law and order, respect the rules, but not when it comes to them. When it comes to them, they want their way, not the rules, but their way. So a lot of the issues comes that the police unions have too much power. And that's the honest truth. But it's not a matter of, because a lot of times people like to turn the discussion to bad apples. There's not a bad apples situation. It's a bad system. The setup is bad. So even if you have so-called good apples, they can't stand out and speak against the bad apples because of the way the system is set up. They can't report to their boss. The whole of investigating yourself, like not having an outside entity to investigate that. That's like, okay, so I have children. If my children did something and I said, okay, you go and you tell me what you did wrong. I don't look at nothing. I don't say that. You just tell me what you did wrong. And they come back and they say, you know what? We didn't do anything wrong. And then that's it. It's over. The discussion is over. That's what we have with police departments. It doesn't make any sense. You can't function where you don't have checks and balances and people aren't being held accountable. And that's the problem. So what Corey was talking about with qualified immunity, I had just interviewed Lee Merritt, who's running for Attorney General in Texas. And I asked him, where are you with qualified immunity? Because that's like the number one issue why police officers aren't being held accountable is because of this topic of qualified immunity. And he said, no, it has no place. You can't have checks and balances as long as this is in place. People understand that we'll look at one case here or there where a police officer gets, guilty or gets charged with something. he said it during the interview, less than 1% of police officers, you know what I mean, get charged, get held accountable, less than 1%. And these are ones that when you have a number like that, you can't function properly. There is no functioning properly if only 1% are even getting held accountable for anything. And that's the crux of the problem.
And so let me ask the panel, in a city like Vallejo, see, I'm having a little difficulty as far as the solutions that you guys are talking about with the police. Because I deal with impacted families, people that have to live the rest of their lives that'll never get their loved one back, mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles and cousins. And so a city like Vallejo has multiple officers with multiple kills. We had an officer who killed 3 people in a 5-month period and was promoted to detective. So see, I think that when we're talking about police reform, what really bothers me is that I feel like it's a lot of smoke being blown. If we're talking about justice, I don't know what justice is to everybody. Justice to me for what happened to my brother is 6 officers getting life in prison without parole or possibly the death penalty. So until we're ready to make changes to qualified immunity, make changes to the police officers' Bill of Rights, which is going to make, criminal law as far as prosecuting police officers more similar to the way that they can be held responsible civilly. I don't want to hear about taking a crumb, of justice. I don't want to hear about defunding the police. No, I'm not a lawyer, but let's get the smart people in the room and let's have them actually write the real law the reason why these officers are out here doing what they're doing is because they have a license to play God with you and your family's lives. They can do anything they want to, and they don't fear any repercussion because they know nothing is going to happen. The 6 officers that murdered my brother were cleared by their own department and back out on the street before my brother was even buried. Back at work on the street. Think about that.
And let's say their names: Brian McMahon, Colin
Brian
Brian Glick. I'm gonna do it. Brian Glick, Jordan Patz,
Cano.
Anthony Romero Cano. Yes, Mark Thompson.
Mark Thompson
back on the street.
And I know that you guys only have so much time, but anyone that's interested that wants to know how deep this stuff goes, I'm willing to share it because see, back in 2004, I don't know if y'all have heard of the Oakland Riders, Oakland, California, a group of corrupt police officers that were basically a police gang. The federal government was called in, and they just recently, in the last few months, were finally, after 20 plus years, relieved of federal oversight. Many of these same officers that were kicked out of Oakland were ended up being in Vallejo. Officer Mark Thompson, who you just named, who took part in murdering Willie, former Oakland police officer. There's connections all over the place for people who really want to know the truth and want to put the kind of connect the dots per se.
And let me just add to what you're saying. Let me add to what you're saying. The solutions have to be holding them accountable. Like if they can do whatever they want to, then of course that's the way they're going to operate. That's like having a child and you give them carte blanche to do whatever they want to, stay up as late as you want, eat whatever you want, do it. That's how we treat the police unit. That's how we treat the police departments. So yes, when I'm talking about reform, when I'm talking about, putting things in place, that's what it is. And then qualified immunity, actually holding them accountable. Not right now, they can do whatever they want to. And you would be amazed at how many departments across the country investigate themselves. You see it replayed over and over again. I'm talking to different people. Boston Jean's sisters, Tatiana Jefferson's sisters, Sean Monterosa's sisters, and also in Vallejo. All these different people I'm talking to in my book, and they are all saying the police departments investigated themselves. That's amazing to me that we even operate with a system like that where there's no checks and balances.